Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today, this is the second in our 12-part series. I don't know how many parts it is about learning a little more about Wichita State University and the School of Music. And today we're going to focus on what it means to be a music education major at WSU. And I'm Alex Sternfeld Dunn. I'm the director of the School of Music. And I am joined by Dr. Tom Wine, who is the director of music education and director of choirs and directs the a cappella choir and madrigal choirs, as well as teaching other music ed courses. Steve Orr as well, who is also is director of the winds and percussion area and teaches instrumental music education. And Dr. Elaine Bernstorff, who teaches special music education, Kodai, early elementary education, and a lot of other stuff that you guys do that I'm forgetting. So thank you, all three of you, for joining us. I guess my first question is, could you all sort of just give us an overview about what it looks like to be a music education major at Wichita State?
Well, basically, a music ed major is doing three things. First one is you are being a college student, and as such, you are taking general education classes, things that anyone at a region school would be taking, such as English, public speaking, math. Second, you are a music student. And so you are taking ensembles and private lessons. You are involved in all of the courses that help you to become a better musician, such as music history and music theory, oral skills. And finally, you are an education student. And so you will be taking classes that help you to interact with students. And those start in your freshman year with an orientation class where you're doing peer teaching and go through your last semester where you actually do student teaching.
There we go. So Steve, could you talk a little bit about what it looks like as an instrumental music education major, and what, if I'm an instrumental music ed major, what am I preparing for? What are my options when I graduate? What have I done?
So, as a music ed student, number one, when you graduate from Wichita State, you graduate with a degree or a degree in music education. Your license is K-12 music. And so you can teach anything from kindergarten through 12th grade. Okay, band, orchestra, choir, general music. That's what the license says, so you can go out and teach that. From the instrumental side, we have a lot of instrumental students who want to go out and be a high school band teacher. Many of them end up finding out that they like the middle school age kids, believe it or not, was me. And oh, it's being recorded. I just got a funny pop-up. Anyway, you will learn how to play each and every one of, you'll learn how to play almost all of the instruments in the band room. We'll take 4 semesters and orchestra, I should say. You'll take 4 semesters of courses learning how to play other instruments. It gets kind of fun. You'll do a lot of practice rehearsing, and then you'll get out there and play. There's a lot of playing in the bands here. We have a lot of good bands and orchestras. We've got a pep band. We've got 2 concert bands. We've got 2 jazz bands. We've got our orchestra, and we've got the orchestra that plays in the pits for musicals, and orchestra that plays in the pits for the opera. So there's a lot of opportunities to play. And yeah, you might end up finding out that you really like the little hip huggers, the little, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And we've got a lot of kids who have been band music, thinking they were going to be the band teacher. And then they get out and student teach. And when you're student teaching, you're doing a secondary school placement and an elementary placement. And there's been a number of our guys that have found out that, oh, those elementary ones are kind of fun. So who knows? You just have a good time learning.
So as an instrumental music ed major, am I taking Does that mean I also will take some like voice music education courses as well, since I'm being trained for everything?
Yep. Not as much as I would like to see, actually, but there's one really solid voice choral course that Dr. Wine teaches. There's an elementary class that Dr. Bernstorff teaches. There's a music for special ed class that Dr. Bernstorff teaches. So yes, you do get a little of everything. So you come out prepared for a first year of teaching.
Okay. So, Tom, talk a little bit about what does it look like to be a choral or a vocal music ed major? Is there a difference between I want to be a voice music ed major versus I want to be a choral music ed major?
Well, it's a choral education degree. But as Steve mentioned, if you are getting licensed, you're licensed pre-K through 12. So you will learn to bang and honk and play everything. It's in the band and orchestra, but we don't expect you'll be proficient. What we're hoping is that you will have resources so that if your first job involves teaching instrumental as well as vocal music, you at least have a skill set and you know who to ask. And if you are, that's how I had a feedback on my speaker. That was really weird.
It was my.
But you're proficient, at least in all of those areas. As Steve said, you'll do practical teaching at a high school level, at a middle school level, and at an elementary level. And a lot of times people don't find their home until they get to that last semester where they're actually full-time. But that's not your first time in the classroom, and we really stress that. You are working with students or peers throughout your time here because you need to know what it's like to be in groups and know how to react. And so that's a really important component of our curriculum.
That's great. So Elaine, I'm going to turn it over to you for a minute. So you have a sort of a special program in that not only do you have the elementary side, but there's a special music ed component to what you do.
So our program is really unique in the nation. We are one of the few places that has an emphasis area and actual in our degree programs in special music education at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. And so all of our students take the special needs course, the exceptional child course that all education majors take. But in our program, we actually take that in the music department. So we are able to talk about what does it look like in a music room when you are working with students who have perceptual differences, who may have regulation issues and social emotional issues. And we look at both how do you work in those settings if you're working in a self-contained setting with students who have severe needs, but also in an inclusion setting where you are working across the continuum. And Wichita actually is very fortunate. There are 4 people in the Wichita district who teach adaptive music and travel around. And so we have the opportunity for our students to actually go and tour in those settings and see how to really meet the needs of all students. Another component that we look at a lot is literacy level. And so we look at how to teach musical concepts through movement and through using visual icons, as well as actually reading music, so that our students are fully equipped to look across areas. And that is a program that started almost 50 years ago and is designed around communicative sciences and disorders. So we even have practicum opportunities for students to work with the speech and hearing, speech pathologists and audiologists as well. So it's a very unique program, and all of our students actually have access to some of that, but we also have the major.
There's a question that posed in the chat that I think feels really relevant right now. What type of music technology courses will I take as a music education major?
Well, it's actually scattered throughout our curriculum. We don't have a special technology course, but we include it in multiple classes. Oral skills classes, even at the beginning of the curriculum. We have a program called Aurelia, which we've been using extensively with our students for developing ear training, but also as a compositional program. Dr. Rohr, you can talk about how you use GarageBand in your methods class.
Well, we haven't used GarageBand in a while. That's not the thing right now. But what we are doing in my methods class is, if you've used Smart Music, my students are playing with Smart Music. We're using Flipgrid and using these things. As we're using technology, we're using it in a way that you would probably see yourself using it as a teacher. And so that's the type of technology that we like to incorporate into our classes. You see them how we use them, and then you can go out and use them yourselves in a few years.
I use Sight Reading Factory with my choirs as every other day. They're doing random exercises that are popping up on the board. With my secondary choral methods class, they're introduced to MuseScore because they have to do some arranging projects to work with middle school music. So like I said, it's an adaptive curriculum that we try and make it practical throughout and not target a single credit class.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I want to highlight that's really important, to piggyback a little bit on what Steve said too, is that, you know, the technology, the software itself, it changes, you know, every other year. You know, it's you know, if it's Flipgrid right now. I know that's what my elementary school age kids are using, but it's probably not going to be Flipgrid in 10 years from now, or maybe it will, who knows. But what I think is really important is that it's understanding the pedagogy of how you use technology, whatever that technology is, to be a better music teacher. You know, so while, you know, as Steve mentioned, yeah, we don't use GarageBand anymore, but you still know how to use audio recording and those kind of things.
Right.
I might jump in and say that also one of the things we do also talk about is different modes of representation, and we do look at universal design for teaching and how does accessibility fit in. So as I said, some students actually need something where they can move physically, whereas other students need to be able to use pictures and icons. And so we're always looking at what does technology do to help us, but then also what adjustments do we need to make it accessible.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to use TikTok in our curriculum yet, but YouTube would never have been considered an academic platform 10 years ago, and now it's a resource for all of our students.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, you know, as we're looking at how COVID-19 might affect our own education on campus, we're talking about, you know, what virtual concerts can we have our students be I mean, we got access now to the Berlin Philharmonic and things like that. It's incredible. It really is. And speaking of technology, COVID-19, one question I've got is, have your alumni who are out there teaching right now, who are dealing with all of this, have you been in contact with, have they contacted you and said, you know, Dr. Bernstorff, Dr. Wine, what am I doing? How do I, like, what am I going to do? Yeah, go ahead, Steve. It looks like you get your hand raised.
So, well, that's because I spent 2 hours yesterday teaching at one of the local middle schools through Microsoft Teams, which is a different Zoom platform. It's not a Zoom, but it's Microsoft platform that's Zoom-like. And I spent 2 hours working with the kids on how to practice effectively. And right now I'm in the process of creating a set of videos that is aimed at middle school, high school students on how to practice effectively. So I mean, technology based on why we're doing what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I'll give a shout out to a couple of our students that did not reach out to us at all, but Ada May and Sarah Kelly, who are first year teachers. USD 259 selected 12 teachers to be models for what they're doing for online curriculum. 2 of them were those 2 beginning teachers. So whatever training they got here, they figured out how to adapt it to their classrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep on doing shout outs is Jamie Hayes, who's a WSU grad. She won the Kansas Bandmasters Association Young Teacher of the Year a couple of years ago. My wife works with her, and she created a whole website using Google Classrooms. And now the kids are playing with some games and doing music ed that way. And by the way, none of the three here of you three know, but Ashton Anderson is the new KBA Young Teacher of the Year.
Yeah.
They're WSU grad. That
Yes.
means every year since 2012, somebody from WSU has been Young Teacher of the Year, except for last year.
And that was just a fluke.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I really I want to highlight as the director is that, you know, so I'm not a Wichita State alum. I'm not even a Kansas native. I mean, I came from California by way of, well, I've been all over, and when I got here, you know, I knew about Wichita State. Having been here 9 years, I've learned more and more about our alumni, and I'm just so amazed at how good they are. And yeah, we've got some amazing performance alums, but our teaching alums are as incredible to me. And when you look at what the way they've been recognized both regionally and nationally as outstanding educators, I mean, that speaks to the quality of our program. And, you know, some of the great performers that we have out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, Joyce DiDonato, was she an education major?
Yep.
Angela Parrish, special music education major? You know,
Yep.
so even those who got ed majors and went on to perform, I mean, that was actually another question. So that I had. So I finished my 4 to 17 years and get my bachelor's in music ed. What do I do with that when I leave here? What are the traditional routes, but what are some of the other things that I might not even realize there's an opportunity?
Well, I might jump in since I've been around the longest, but we have a large number of music ed students who have gone on to go into higher education. We have a large number who have actually become composers. We have a large number who have become even things like lawyers and doctors, speech pathologists, a wide variety. But what I think maybe the elephant in the room is that our music education majors have also remained teachers. So we know that nationally the statistics show that a lot of people leave teaching after 5 to 7 years of teaching. And yet our students have actually remained in the teaching field. They may change locations and they may change levels, but a lot of our teachers have stayed successfully in the teaching field in various ways and then added credentials on top of it.
And I will say, Alex, that we do track placement of our alums. And one of the things that we've tracked is in the last 5 years, any student that wanted to get a job in public education found a job. Now, we had some students that went on to grad school. We had some students that went on to other positions because they elected to pursue other opportunities. But if they wanted a job, we have a 100% hiring rate in the last 5 years.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. I'm also curious as to, and we sort of mentioned, you know, there's once you become a teacher, I know we have some teachers who have also become like principals and vice principals. So there's some options there. Tom, something.
Gone to the dark side.
That's yes, the dark side of administration. Something else that you said, Tom, that I want to go back to and help sort of, I think, walk a potential student through as they think about what a music education degree even pathway looks like. So you said, you know, by the time you get out there and get your first job, that's not the first time in the classroom. So full disclosure, I was a music ed major for 2 weeks. And realized really quickly that I did not have a passion for teaching K through 12. And I didn't want to do that. So I changed. I became a composer, and I think the world's a better place for it. So if I come in freshman year, what is my first experience as a music education major specifically?
Well, your first experience is as a music major. You will be taking 10 credits that are music. You'll be taking music theory, oral skills, taking piano. You'll be taking private lessons. You'll be in at least one ensemble. So your first experience is becoming proficient at what you want to teach, being a proficient musician. You'll become a college student. You have to take certain number of general education classes before you can even enter into the curriculum. But your first semester here, you take what we call orientation to music education, where we put you together as a cohort group, vocal, instrumental, strings, doesn't matter. We want you to realize this is what it means to come together as potential music teachers. What is our combined voice in a profession? And so you take that as a freshman, you'll take an intro to music ed as a sophomore, you'll take elementary methods type classes your junior year, senior year, you'll take secondary methods classes, you'll take rehearsal techniques classes. Along the way, you'll take conducting classes. And then you also have practicums, what we call field experiences with all of those classes, where you are either peer teaching or going out into the schools and observing or doing mini lessons. Pre-student teaching involves doing a whole unit of classes before you're thrown into student teaching where you're full-time. So it is becoming a musician. And if you're a music education major, you can be in the musical, in the opera. You have all of these performance opportunities available to you regardless of your major. We want you to be a good musician so that you have the skill set that allows you to be a good music teacher.
Yeah. You know, I want to help dispel a myth for a lot of people, is that sometimes there's that horrible rumor out there that, oh, those who can't do teach, right? And it's just so not true. And the level, and I can speak from the applied music side of instructors that I've talked to, the expectations of musicianship that they have for their music education majors are the same as their performance majors, because they expect, we want the best musicians possible in the classroom, because that's part of that's one aspect of what makes you a great teacher. You can't be a great teacher and a bad musician. The two go hand in hand. Now, you can be a great musician and a bad teacher. I think we've all seen that. But so another question popped into the chat that I want to ask. Do you offer a transition to teaching for someone who already has a music degree, and what would that look like?
Elaine?
We do not have a formal transition to teaching program that, how do I say this? We work with people who are in transition to teaching. Wichita State University has it. But what we have found is that our students have generally wanted to pick up music education coursework and not just education coursework. So a transition to teaching program has education courses, but nothing in music education. So you're not building music education skills, you're only building education skills. We are very creative, however, about putting together a program for students. And depending on what your background is, it doesn't take very many semesters for you to do the licensure piece. So there are three options. You can come in and do licensure only. You can do licensures with a master's degree, which people do that. And a lot of people are actually maybe doing substitute teaching while they do their licensure, and have found that to be more successful for them long-term than a transition to teaching program. We can give you information about a transition to teaching program if that's what you want, and we will help match you to a program. But we have had more of our people come through, and even people who did transition to teaching, who have said to us that the way we've got our program designed is helping them be more successful.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that critical year, my last year of college as a music ed major. I'm in that space where I'm about to head into the real world. And I've heard about this thing called student teaching. Can you talk a little more about what student teaching is and what it involves for the students?
If I can jump in, I'll talk about the elementary part of it, because all of the students do the elementary, and then I'll let Tom and Steve talk about the secondary. So every student does do a K through 12 placement for student teaching. And so part of your time, either half days or half a semester, is working in general music at the elementary level. We have a variety of placements, and students have that opportunity. We're very careful about our placements. We like to do those where we assess the student's strengths and try to find a good match. Most of the time we use urban schools. Occasionally we will use a rural placement, but most of the time we do use urban settings. And we have amazing people who act as cooperating teachers. So in terms of the elementary part, usually we try to get you as many different grade levels as possible, but sometimes you will lean towards younger or older students. And then for those students who are special music education majors, they get part of their placement is also working with students with special needs in a separate setting.
Steve, can you talk a little bit about the secondary placement and what that looks like?
So when you're in a secondary placement, you go through college and you learn how to be a musician. And then you go through college and you learn how pedagogy works. A lot of it's kind of theoretical. And you go out and you do some placements, a little bit in each class out to the schools and try out a little bit. When you're student teaching, you're with the same kids every day. And so now you're learning how to take those theories and really see how they apply. You do, when you student teach, in Kansas, you have to complete a portfolio of basically showing you, hey, look, this is how I teach. And you have to pass that portfolio in order to get licensure in Kansas. We call it the teacher work sample. It was called the KPTP. You might have heard of that. And so our students go out and they figure out from step one, what do our students know? What unit do I want to teach? How do I assess it? What teaching practices do I use? They go through that whole thing. So that's what we do in secondary and in elementary. I think most of our students do choose to do it with the elementary kids, in fact. But I'm saying a lot of bums right now. I just noticed that. But
Bring out all of our worst insecurities. So Tom, to just sort of tie the bow up on this. So I am a music ed major. I do my curriculum, my 120 credits, which, by the way, that's something I want to highlight about our program that is very unique. Is I don't know that we're the only one, but we are one of the very few music education programs in the country that is 120 credits. Most are more like 126 to 132. And I think we've managed to find a way to get 120 credits without losing sort of the quality of what we do, which is important. So I take my 120 credits. I do my year of student teaching. Dr. Orr mentioned I got to put a portfolio together. Are there any other things I need to do to get that license that lets me teach in Kansas? And then my other question is, what if I don't want to teach in Kansas? Can I still teach? I mean, what do I need to go get a music ed degree in the state that I want to be a teacher at?
Great questions. Couple things from a pragmatic point of view. We allow students to student teach in either the fall or the spring semester. So if you are student teaching in fall, it's a great experience to see how the beginning of the year works. If you're instrumental, you get to see how marching band works. But you don't get to see what contest looks like. So if you student teach in spring, you get to see how the school year wraps up. You get to see how they do the variety show, but you don't get that first week in the classroom. So one of the things we work with our kids is you absolutely need to ask a lot of questions, build as many resources as you can along the way. There are some licensure tests, just like when you go to college, you have to pass an ACT. We have a test called the Praxis, the PLT, which are licensing exams saying you have professional knowledge and you have knowledge for working in the classroom. And then you get your license to teach in Kansas. What you can do is if you want to teach in another state, you apply to the State Department of Education in that state. So if you're going to go to Missouri, the Missouri State Department of Education, ask what their licensing requirements are. Say, I have a license from Kansas. What is reciprocal? They will tell you you are reciprocal in the state, or you might have some requirements. For example, if you want to teach in Texas, you have to take Texas history, because we don't cover Texas history in Kansas and didn't know it would be a nationally required course.
Yeah, so you might have to do a couple of other things, but you don't have to go to that state and get a whole nother degree. Elaine, you add.
Two things I'd like to add is we haven't really talked about what's called pre-student teaching, which we also have. And that's usually the prior semester to your student teaching. So a lot of students actually do gain some skills that way. So they do get to see things that are happening in the opposite semester. And I would reiterate what Dr. Wine said about our state being reciprocal. The Kansas teaching license is one of the most reciprocal licenses in the country. And so it's almost always, maybe not always, but almost always, you could still get a job and teach in a different state while you do whatever that requirement is that is needed, because of the way our program is designed. It is very much accepted. And I think the one that I'm thinking Hawaii's the one that's the hardest to get for probably obvious reasons.
Well, something that highlights too is that even in this day and age, we're still seeing a teacher shortage in a lot of states. And, I remember last year, or maybe it was the year before, I was at Chicago Midwest in the exhibition booth with the WSU booth, and I had a fine arts coordinator from Las Vegas who said, "Hey, here's my card. If you've got any music ed students, we'll take them. We're desperate for teachers." I had another one from Texas come by. Hey, we need some more teachers. If you've got students who are graduating, here's our information. So there are teaching jobs out there all over the state, and some of them pay really well. Texas is I know has a pretty good salary for a teacher. Nevada is the same. Kansas is okay, I think. Could always be better, but so that's another thing that I want to just put out there that I've recognized is that there's a lot of states that are looking for our teachers, and they're willing to work with someone who's got a Kansas license because they have a need that needs to be filled. Another thing I sort of wanted to talk a little bit about is I know I was a composition major as an undergrad, and I got to go to a couple of cool conferences for composers and meet other composers from, in my case, from around the country, meet some other teachers. I know for applied, for like there's the International Trumpet Guild, there's saxophone. Is there anything like that for music ed majors where they would get to network with professionals around the country or in the state?
Yes. Heck yes. The thing is when you become a music teacher, oftentimes you're just you're the only one in your school quite often. If I'm teaching high school or middle school, I'm the only band teacher. There's a choir teacher that kind of understands what I'm talking about. There's an orchestra teacher maybe that understands what I'm talking about, but you know, in that same school, there's 4 or 5 math teachers. And so there's a lot of collaboration that way. We realize as a music education profession that we need a lot of collaboration. And so every year, music educators in every state has a convention. The nice thing about Kansas is our music education convention is about 4 miles away from campus.
Yeah, if that.
In Wichita. And so our students have a lot of opportunities, and we actually push our students every year to go to the conference and to take the sessions and learn about new ideas of how to teach, see the exhibit halls, see the fundraiser.
The largest state collegiate group for NAFME. Our chapter of NAFME is the largest in the state. We have about 65 members right now.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of that learning conference-wise. Students all over, and I need to really recommend to you guys is whatever university you go to, if you become a music teacher, make it a habit of going to your conferences. And if you have a chance, go to the big national ones too, like Alex mentioned, the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic. If you're a band or orchestra teacher, you've at least got to go there a couple of times because there's a lot of information there. In fact, go to the website, there's a lot of information that they put on there. We always want to learn new things, and that's how we do it as music teachers.
I think, this is something that's come up in a lot of these conversations that I think is really important to reiterate is that, I think this is true of any college education that you get, but I think it's especially true in music is that we understand that our learning doesn't stop the day we get our degree. And that's when our learning really starts,
Yes.
And so it's about this continued the continued development, it's the continued connections, it's those continued learning kind of things.
And Elaine, you might give a shout out to our Kadai program, talking about continued learning and how we offer that to the community.
Yes, so a couple of things about it. We have one of the largest training programs in the country for Kadai. It started in 2004 and has continued on. And we actually have a large number of our persons who've been through our program are serving on the national level. So I'm just going off as one of the national officers. The national executive director is a sub person out of our program. And so we often have groups of students who will do their training with us in the summers for their levels training so that they can be certified, but they also go to the national conferences. And we've had students who've gone to the international conferences as well. We've gone to Scotland. We've also gone to International Society of Music Education conferences. Dr. Orr can talk a little bit about what's being offered this summer because we're actually, because of the things that are happening in the world, offering some summer workshop activities this summer that people from all over the United States will have the opportunity to do because they're going to be offered on Zoom this summer. And so I think there'll be a lot of visibility and activity in that area.
Yeah, we're kind of living the COVID dream right now, or nightmare. And so what we had to do is we had to cancel our annual summer Kadai program. The Kadai training program actually is for practicing teachers. It's for people who have graduated. Like Alex said, after graduation, you start your learning. And so it's a 2-week, very intensive program, and it changed the way I taught. Because I took it 30 years ago almost. And we had to cancel it this year. And so as a faculty, Kadai faculty, we got together and figured out what we could do. And so, yes, we'll be offering little tiny taste of Kadai workshops, as it were. And
you had how many people on campus last summer, Steve?
61, I think, came in, took level 1, level 2, and level 3. We usually graduate anywhere between a dozen to 16 every year, go out with their Kadai training. If, for those of you who don't know, the Kadai Method is actually a method of teaching music. Around this country, they think it's only for elementary, but I used it extensively when I was a high school band teacher and when I taught middle school band. And one of our graduates is a high school choir teacher here in town, and he and I last year created a secondary Kadai program track to go with this. And it is it's a handful, I think 2 or 3 programs in the country with a secondary Kadai track.
So, Steve, I just want to follow up just a little bit because maybe not everyone knows what Kodai is. So you're saying it's more than just singing do, re, mi, fa.
Oh boy, there's a lot to Kodai. It changed my teaching. It has a lot to do with how to teach concepts. Kadai used to say that music literacy is the ability to see what you hear. Think about that. I heard something and I can see it in my head, and hear what you see. In other words, I look at a piece of music and I can hear it in my head.
Yeah.
And so that's what Kadai is about. How do you teach a student, even a young one? And I taught elementary for 4 years as well. And even the young ones could look at a piece of music at their level and hear it in their head.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do.
So you've mentioned that that's primarily a graduate level program, the Kodai workshop, and you can either do it as its own standalone certification, or it can be connected to our Masters of Music Ed.
Yes, we
That
have a large group of kids. We have a large group of students who are working on their Masters in Music Education with Kadai emphasis.
I might jump in and also say that while we host the Kodai training here in Wichita and have one of the largest programs in the nation, we also teach our students about other methodologies. So they do learn about comprehensive musicianship. They do learn about ORF. And most of our graduates will go on and gain some expertise in more than one of these areas and kind of learn how they can fit together. But I want to reiterate one more thing that Dr. Orr said is we are all about teaching concepts. So we want students to not just be able to push the right buttons or perform, sing the right notes, but we want them to have a strong understanding of the structures of music. And that's where the literacy piece and the concepts come in. And so I think that's the goal of most good music education programs, but it's been a goal at Wichita State since the 60s when comprehensive musicianship came into being used around the United States. And it is a strength of ours.
I'm just curious, the comprehensive stuff, those graduate level concepts of Kodai, does that mean I'm not, as an undergrad, going to get to learn any Kodai methods? Is that so?
No, we do it. We have several in the elementary methods book. We talk about it. We also do in our literacy class. So, and students are involved in every workshop that's done in Wichita. The college students get to go for free. Their membership in Kodai is free. They get to go to those trainings. Usually they're on a Saturday, and there's usually one each semester. Sometimes there are 3 during the year. And that's another thing. Before they do their student teaching, most of our students have interacted with several teachers through those workshops. So when they get ready to student teach, a lot of times they will actually put in a request for a particular person to work with, just because they have interacted with and observed and watched those people and gotten to know them. Yeah. So it's like one great big family, and it's a lot of fun.
Thanks. So we're about out of time. So I just want to check in with you three. Is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you want to make sure we know?
I'd like to jump in with one last thing that we haven't talked about, and that is all the opportunities for employment, because we are in Wichita, and Wichita is a large enough urban area that even our music ed majors, because they are good performers, have church jobs. our music education majors are teaching in some of the music schools around town and privately. They are playing in different kinds of pit orchestras for musicals. They actually, some of them are doing service type jobs, but getting paid for helping with the drum lines and things like that. So that's one advantage that we have, is that we all have a lot of opportunities for students to do things, and not just food service, but things that are directly related to their music teaching. Some of them actually do some paraprofessional jobs too, like work at Latchkey and things like that, where they get to work with young people. But most of our students who need to have some kind of employment can find something that's music related.
Yeah, that's a great point to make.
Couple other points that I had a list here of things that we wanted to talk about is first, where we are in Wichita and what Kansas is like in the way we're built as a state is, if you're going to school in Wichita, you're going to school in an urban area. So you've got the opportunity to have experiences in urban schools. Not very far away, you've got suburban schools. And we have some very strong programs out there to where you can have experiences there. And there's not too much farther outside of that you are out in the sticks, out in farmland. And you can have a lot of learning opportunities in rural, I hate that word, rural school districts. You could tell I had a hard time with my R's as a kid. And my best friend's name was Wabi. So that's one thing to think of, is you can actually have opportunities to have field experiences in those different types of environments. The other thing that I wanted to leave you with is that I think our faculty is kind of unique. Many people who end up as music teacher educators, professor, they'll work 5 years, go out, get their doctorate, and then be a teacher, having had 5 years of experience in 1 or 2 schools. The 3 of us, plus one of our other partners in crime, Jeannie Vance, who is our student teaching supervisor, I don't know how many years of experience we have, but it's a bunch. I taught 17 years before I became a professor. Dr. Wine, 12, 10, Dr. Bernstorff, 15.
15.
And Jeannie Vance, the other person I talked about, she had taught a full career. This is actually her second career. And she actually went to the dark side and became an administrator for 10 years. And that is one heck of a great perspective to have, because she knows what it looks like from the principal side. So those are the two.
And you were talking, Alex, about our 120 credit hour degree. The reason that works for us is because all of our education classes are taught by these full-time music teachers, so that every class that you take, when you talk about education, you're talking about education specifically for music students. And because we've been able to make that transition and have licensed people in multiple areas, that's how we've been able to keep our degree at 120 hours and get our students to have authentic teaching experiences. We're really proud of that.
Well, I'm going to end it on this note. We talked a little bit about our alumni and how outstanding they are, and just the one very quick story and a little pride too. When I became director of the school last year, one of the first things I did was I reached out to the fine arts coordinator for USD 259, our local school district, and I said, I'd really love to come to your in-service where all of the music teachers are together and just introduce myself, talk a little bit about the School of Music and what we're doing. So yeah, I'd love that. So I came in and I don't know how many teachers there were. You guys would have a better guess. Elementary through high school?
85.
85?
Well, that's the
just
total. You might
elementary.
not have been in that whole group. Yeah, no, I think you were there.
That's just
85.
elementary.
That's just elementary, though.
Yes,
Yeah. So
about 120,
elementary, middle, and high. High school,
120.
120. So 120. And the first thing I said is, how many of you are WSU alums?
Yeah.
Bachelor's or master's degree or Kodai certification? And maybe 100 of those 120 raised their hand. I mean, and the Sean Chastain, who's the fine arts coordinator, actually looked at me and goes, I had no idea it was that many. Like that blew his mind. Sean Chastain, and that's sort of where I wanted to end it on is Sean Chastain, who's our fine arts coordinator, is also an alum from WSU and is the recent recipient, twice alum, undergrad and master's, and is our recent recipient of the College of Fine Arts Hall of Fame Award for Outstanding Alumni in the School of Music. So it's just another alumni who's gone out there and made us really proud. So I'll tell you, I'm always impressed by you all, our music ed faculty, and by our teachers. I've had the really good fortune. I've been invited out to a couple of middle schools and elementary schools. That's sort of the place of passion for me as far as going out and doing kind of recruiting things. And our alumni reached out and said, "Hey, would you come work with my high school orchestra?" Or elementary school asked me to come, talk about what it was like to be a composer. Our teachers, our students they just continue to impress me. And so, I hope for those of you who are watching or thinking about the field of music education, a couple of takeaways that I have. One is we have an outstanding program with outstanding educators, outstanding alumni, and outstanding students that you can work side by side with. Two, there are jobs to be had. You can be employed with the music. And as we're looking at an economy that's really fraught right now, boy, that feels really good to know that there's employment to be had. And the third is a music education degree is a education degree and a music degree. So it does both of those things really well. So with that, I thank you all for tuning in, and I thank the three of you for joining us for this conversation.
And we're free, we're very accessible by email. So if you have questions, please reach out to us.
Yeah. And so you can reach any one of our faculty at their first name, period, last name at wichita.edu. Or you can find more information about the programs by going to wichita.edu/music. And with that, we will say adieu.